Hi gang. So I want to talk about some stuff that's been going on with me vocally because it's been like 7 months of some vocal trial and error, and I feel like I'm finally coming out of the woods. And I just feel like information is power. And if any of you are going through this, or going through some vocal difficulties, maybe some things in this long video will be helpful. Mainly so that you know that it's a journey if you're going through vocal problems. It's not usually something that can be fixed overnight. It's not something that, if you're doing 8 shows a week, is easy to recover from because you're just living in such a heightened stress response experience of like high adrenaline and then rest. Your adrenals are totally whacked. Your vagus nerve is like, so wow, that's so great. I've been using my voice really aggressively for the last year. I was doing Just in Time on Broadway. I was recording for Has Been Hotel season 3. I was recording the lead part for another animation project, which will be announced soon. And I was also doing press for the 4 seasons and going to conventions sometimes for Has Been Hotel. So my voice was being used a lot. And I've always prided myself on having a pretty strong voice. During Mean Girls, which was like the biggest vocal lift I feel like I've ever done, I really didn't have to call out much because of my voice. I would get sick, but I wouldn't have to call out much for vocal fatigue. So when I started to experience some vocal fatigue, like right around when we opened Just in Time, I started to panic because I had a really long journey ahead of me. I knew I had 6 months in the show. I knew I was going to start recording Has Been and this other animation project. And I just knew that there wasn't really going to be a break in sight for me. And so I started to basically feel like my voice was not my own. The clarity that I normally talk with, the ease that I can reach my sort of like upper mixed register, basically the reason that I can be a theater performer because I can live a life at the same time as doing 8 shows a week, that was gone. I didn't call my friends on the phone. I didn't talk to my family for a long time. I wasn't going out. I canceled concerts. I said no to a lot of stuff. And this was like really fucking depressing. Like really a bummer. I'm so not used to that being my reality of feeling like every conversation was coming at a cost, every joyful press moment of talking to my 4 seasons castmates was coming at a cost, thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do the show tonight? I wouldn't go into my castmates' dressing rooms to talk to them before the show because I was so worried about my voice. And also I was hiding it. Like, I think like the people closest to me in the show, my dressing room mate Gracie, my dresser Megan, they knew what I was going through, but it's so boring to hear people talk about their vocal issues, especially when you see them on stage and you're like, you sound great, what are you talking about? But very few people were aware of it, and I felt like sort of just like a half version of myself for most of the last 5 months because I've just not been able to get my voice in check. A couple things I started to do, I went back to my speech therapist and I went to my vocal coach, Andrew Byrne, and both my speech therapist, Linda Carroll, and Andrew Byrne helped me through the worst parts of things. But at the end of the day, we were still dealing with like, no matter how much I could reset via speech therapy or voice lessons, I was still in a deficit. And so I eventually decided to do this procedure called a PRP blood transfusion procedure, which basically took healthy blood from my body and put it into my vocal cords. And it was 2 injections. I do not advocate for taking prednisone unless you really need it. So this was my solution to not having to take steroids. It required me to be out of my show for 10 days, which is longer than I've ever taken off in my life. And I had to be silent for 7 of the days post-procedure. The procedure went great. The ENT did nothing wrong. I feel like I came back to the show and I was singing better for about 72 hours. And then all the problems started coming back. The hoarseness, the fatigue, the lack of mix, just fully, I could only belt with chord closure. And I started to get really, really scared. I went to a new ENT. She looked at my chords. She was able to compare my chords from Mean Girls era to today. And she was like, there's not that big of a difference. There's a little bit of swelling, but I don't see anything that would need surgery. And I was like, then what is wrong with me? And all I could do was continue to rest my voice, go to speech therapy, try and have voice lessons that could at least get me through to the end of an 8-show week, but I was still in a huge deficit. I finally left the show, hanging on by a thread. If you came to see the show, you would maybe not have known, but my voice was constantly a question mark all those 6 months. And worse than that, my social life was just fucking in the toilet because I just couldn't, I feel like I couldn't really embrace people with the enthusiasm I normally do. So I leave the show and I start to think, okay, it'll get better. I knew I was allergic to something in that theater. I had a really big allergic reaction when I moved into it. So my ENT and my voice coach and I had all agreed, like, the theater is probably causing an allergic reaction every night. You're swollen. You're just not going to get better until you get out of the theater. I started to get a little bit better when I got out of the theater. I wasn't dealing with the wheezing, breathing that I was dealing with when I was in that basement underground theater, but I still wasn't getting my voice back. And I started to think about when I got that procedure of the PRP, the blood transfusion. And when I felt those needles go into my throat, I had what can only be described as a panic response. I immediately felt my throat go as if I was going to cry. I did cry, and I went silent. And I wasn't supposed to go silent. I was supposed to be able to talk to the doctor and say everything's okay, but I was so afraid to speak. It felt like when Ariel gives her voice to Ursula. And I left the procedure and I cried outside with Kyle for like 20 minutes, and then I went on vocal rest for seven days, and I didn't really think about it again. But on the other side of being in just in time, and I could finally sort of reflect, I started to journal about what that experience was and how alarming and scary it was, and how much my body knew something was wrong as soon as those needles went in. Not because the ENT did anything wrong, not because it was wrong to do the procedure, but because my body was not prepared for it. Mentally, my brain knew why I was getting this procedure, but physically, these guys had no idea. And I started to think about why nothing was working. Why was I not recovering with speech therapy the way I normally do? Why was my incredible vocal coach not able to help me through this? Why was rest no longer enough? Why was I still feeling, even when I was out of the basement theater, that I was losing my voice at the end of the day? And I started to journal a little bit about how much this experience has really rocked me to my core. And when I started journaling, I realized how much emotion was locked in here. And I could start, this is going to sound so woo-woo, but I want to share this because I think our voices are woo-woo. They are like the epicenter of where we hold emotion. And when you do something to that epicenter, there might be reverberations of shock and trauma. And I don't use those words lightly. But I started to research what could potentially be happening in terms of a negative muscular reaction to that procedure. This is a long video. It's going to be long. Sorry. And what I kind of started to realize was something was like trapped in here. And this sounds really woo-woo, but I very much was aware that like something was not moving correctly with the musculature. No matter what I did, whether I took steroids, whether I did this blood transfusion, whether I did speech therapy or voice lessons or vocal rest, the swelling, the feeling of swelling wasn't going down. And I finally was like, it's not that. I'm going to stop wasting time on going to another ENT, on taking more meds. Something is different. And I met with my voice teacher and I said, this is not my cords. Like, I know my body, it recovers faster than this. It's something else. I think it is the muscles. I think something happened the day that I got those injections, and I think my body went, and I don't think it's come down. And I can like literally feel it. I feel like I have like a bruise just from doing that. And he listened and was like, all right, great. Let's do some hands-on stuff, which like, I do not like touching this. This is scary. I do not trust my hands on this gold. But we started doing some hands-on movement, some laryngeal massage type of stuff, which again, I've heard about this stuff. I've never tried it. I've always just been like, yeah, not for me. We did one exercise and I had a very weird emotional reaction. And I don't mean weird in a negative way. I mean an all-encompassing, tears flowing, movement releasing from my vocal cord response. Simply from some very light laryngeal massage and movement and manipulation of this region. And then we stopped the lesson because something had like happened. And I left the voice lesson, and then I spent some time going on YouTube and researching muscle tension dysphonia and laryngeal massage. I had gone to so many specialists for like 7 months, and A lot of them had helped. Most of them had helped. But they'd only bought me time. Nobody could figure out like what was going on. And when I finally sat down and really took time to tap into what I was actually feeling was wrong with my voice, which was this tightness, this pressure, this absolute stress response of being squeezed up and not letting go. And when I finally shared that with my vocal coach and said, this is what I feel, we were able to finally see some like light at the end of the tunnel. And I know this sounds really dramatic, but if you are a professional voice user, your voice is fucking everything to you. And I have literally not felt like myself for 7 months because of my voice. After we had this little lesson, look, it's a lot of money to spend time with a vocal coach every week, and I love mine, and I would spend all the money on him if I could. But he gave me the little tool unlock that I needed to do the work on my own. And I finally just sat down. I went to YouTube. I watched as many videos as I could about laryngeal massage and muscle tension dysphonia. I spent the whole weekend silent while doing these massages and these exercises. And I literally sang through the stuff that I have been afraid to sing for Has Been Hotel for the concert we're doing on October 20th, because I've known a week ago I couldn't make these noises. I sang through it last night in my hotel room before I go to set today. And I was like, okay, I'm back. I know what this is now. I know how to help myself. I know how to heal myself. I needed to give myself the time to admit how fucking traumatic and scary that experience was. And I think all I'm saying is for people who are going through voice panic, that's what I would like to call this, voice panic. Your voice is not what it is. It is going to take some trial and error to figure out what's going on. And it's also going to take some reflection of maybe things that you are not admitting to yourself. I don't think I got a bad procedure. I don't think I had a negative ENT experience. But I think if I had really admitted to myself how scary and scared I felt after I felt those needles go into my throat, perhaps I would have been able to share it more quickly with somebody who could help me, who could have listened to me tell that story instead of me pretending everything was okay, and said, oh, this isn't swelling. These aren't nodes. These aren't polyps. This is a stress response, and your entire musculature system has locked in upon itself and is refusing to let go, and we need to help it let go. That's what has been the problem for so many months. I'm fascinated by this because I've never gone through such a long process. I've never tried so many different things to negative result. And I've also never felt so emotionally connected to my voice. And I've never realized how much the emotional connection affects our ability to use it properly. So, this is not to say that everybody with vocal problems is dealing with muscle tension dysphonia or, traumatic residual waste in their throat chakra. But I think it is to say that instead of panicking and running to every specialist possible, find your team of people you trust. Really think about, before you take the drugs, before you do the surgery, is this what I need? Is this what my body is telling me I need? I think we know ourselves better than any doctor possibly could. And if you can communicate what is going on more adequately and aptly, and the only way you can do that is by really checking in with yourself and not giving yourself a deadline of, fuck, I gotta figure this out before I have to do that show on Saturday or that concert on Monday. That's when I think you can finally start healing your voice. I don't know if any of this is helpful. I find it so aggressively interesting, partially because it's just my livelihood, but also because as somebody who felt like she knew so much about her voice, I have been incredibly humbled by this experience and incredibly humbled by how much I took for granted that it would just always be okay. And that I just would think, if I can just push through, I'll be fine. If I can just push through, I'll come out the other side eventually. I was not going to come out the other side because of that mentality. And it was only by actually slowing down and admitting the panic and anxiety and fear that I had been holding on to, and being able to articulate that in words to somebody who could then help me, that I've felt any improvement
and that I feel like I'm ready to fucking rock this Has-Been concert on October 20th. So I'll see you there. Thank you for listening. This is so long, but I'm thinking of you. If you're dealing with this, comment. Let's chat. I have so many thoughts about this crazy, crazy thing we do.